Could humans really survive the harsh deserts of the Dune's Arrakis? And we found out. Dune, the epic series of sci-fi books by Frank Herbert, now turned into a movie of the same name, is set in the far future on the desert planet of Arrakis. Herbert outlined a richly detailed world that at first glance seemed so real we could imagine ourselves in that world. However, if such a world did exist, what would it actually be like? We are scientists with specific expertise in climate modeling, so we simulated the climate of Arrakis to find out. We wanted to know if the physics and environment of such a world would stack up against a real climate model. And we were given the visualization of the climate of Arrakis. This is what we're seeing right here. Simulation, of course. And you can zoom on particular features, highlighting things like temperature or wind speed on the link here in the article. So they said when we were done, we were very pleased to discover that Herbert had envisioned an environment that for the most part meets expectations. We might need to occasionally suspend disbelief, but much of Arrakis itself would indeed be habitable, albeit inhospitable. So how do you build a fantasy world like Arrakis? We started with a climate model commonly used to predict weather and climate here on our Earth. To use these sorts of models, you have to decide on the physical laws, well known in the case of our planet, and then input data on everything from the shape of mountains to the strength of the sun or the makeup of the atmosphere. The model can then simulate the climate and tell you roughly what the weather might be like. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. We decided to keep the same fundamental physical laws that govern weather and climate here on Earth. If our model presented something completely strange and exotic, this could suggest that laws were different on Arrakis, or Frank Herbert's fantastical vision of Arrakis was just to say that, a fantasy. We then needed to tell the climate model certain things about Arrakis based on the detailed information found in the main novels and the accompanying Dune encyclopedia. These included the planet's topography and its orbit, which was essentially circular, akin to our Earth's orbit today. The shape of an orbit can really impact the climate. And we can see the long and irregular winters in Game of Thrones, for example. Finally, we told the model that the atmosphere was made of what it was made of. For the most part, it's quite similar to our atmosphere here on Earth today, although with less carbon dioxide, 350 parts per million, as opposed to 417 parts per million. The big difference is the ozone concentration. On Earth, there is very little ozone in the lower atmosphere, only around 0.0000001%. That's 6 zeros after the decimal point. On Arrakis, it's 0.5%. Ozone is important as it's around 65 times more effective at warming the atmosphere than CO2 over a 20-year period. So having fed in all the necessary data, we then sat back and waited. Complex models like this take time to run, in this case more than 3 weeks. We needed a huge supercomputer to be able to crunch the hundreds of thousands of calculations required to simulate Arrakis. However, what we found was worth the wait. Arrakis's climate is basically plausible. The books and film describe a planet with unforgiving sun and desolate wastelands of sand and rock. However, as you move closer to the polar regions towards the cities of Arrakeen and Carthage, the climate in the book begins to change into something that might be inferred as more hospitable. Yet our model tells a different story. In our model of Arrakis, the warmest months in the tropics hit around 45 degrees Celsius, whereas the coldest months, they do not drop below 15 degrees Celsius, similar to that of Earth. The most extreme temperatures would actually occur in the mid-latitudes and polar regions. Here, summer can be as hot as 70 degrees Celsius on the sand, so it's pretty hot, also suggested in the book winters are just as extreme, as low as minus 40 degrees Celsius in the mid-latitudes down to minus 75 degrees Celsius in the poles. This is counterintuitive, as the equatorial region receives more energy from the sun. However, in the model, the polar regions of Arrakis have significantly more atmospheric moisture and high cloud cover, which acts to warm the climate since water vapor is a greenhouse gas. The book says that there is no rain on Arrakis. However, our models suggest that very small amounts of rainfall would occur, confined to just the higher latitudes in the summer and autumn, and only on mountains and plateaus. There would be some clouds in the tropics as well as polar latitudes, varying from season to season. And the book also mentions that polar ice caps exist, at least in the northern hemisphere, and have for a long time, but this is where the book perhaps differ the most from our model. It suggests summer temperatures would melt any polar ice, and there would be no snowfall to replenish the ice caps in winter. Hot but habitable? Could humans arrive on such a desert planet? First, we must make an assumption that the human-like population in the book and film share similar thermal tolerances to human bodies. If that's the case, then, contrary to the book and film, it seems the tropics would be the most habitable area. As there is so little humidity there, survivable wet bulb temperatures, a measure of habitability that combines temperature and humidity, are never exceeded. The mid-latitudes, where most people on Arrakis live, are actually the most dangerous in terms of heat. In the lowlands, monthly average temperatures are often above 60 degrees Celsius, with maximum daily temperatures even higher, and such temperatures are deadly for humans. We do know that all humanoid life on Arrakis outside of habitable places must wear still suits designed to keep the wearer cool and reclaim body moisture from sweating, urination, and breathing to provide drinkable water. This is important as it's stated in the book that there is no rainfall on Arrakis, no standing bodies of open water, and little atmospheric moisture that can be reclaimed. The planet also gets very cold outside of the tropics, with winter temperatures that would also be uninhabitable without technology. Cities like Arrakeen and Carthage would suffer from both heat and cold stress, like a more extreme version of parts of Siberia on Earth, which can have both uncomfortably hot summers and brutally cold winters. Now, it's important to remember that Herbert wrote the first Dune novel way back in 1965. This was 2 years before recent Nobel winner Syokuro Manabe published his seminal first climate model, and Herbert did not have the advantage of modern supercomputers, or indeed any computer. So given that, the world created looks remarkably consistent 6 decades on. The authors modified the well-used climate model for exoplanet research and applied it to the planet in Dune. The work was carried out in their spare time and is intended as an appropriate outreach piece to demonstrate how climate scientists use mathematical models to better understand our world and exoplanets. It will feed into future academic outputs on desert worlds and exoplanets. This was on The Conversation, Creative Commons. It's on Science Alert. It's by Alex Farnsworth, Senior Research Associate in Meteorology, University of Bristol. Michael Farnsworth, Research Lead, Future Electrical Machines Manufacturing Hub, University of Sheffield. And Sebastian Steenig, Research Associate in Paleoclimate Modeling, University of Bristol. And it's by Alex Farnsworth, and as we said, et al., their colleagues. The Conversation, October 27, 2021. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support.